Mark Chipman with us on CJOB 68. The Moose are here, very successful. The key in getting an NHL franchise is building that building, MTS Centre. And from the very beginning, was that building designed in the background that the NHL would come back here someday? Was that primarily on your mind at that point, or was it a matter of, we just got to get this thing built?
It was more a matter of we felt like the community needed a new building, and I think that was obvious. Winnipeg Arena had served its purpose, but in the design of it, we wanted to make sure that we didn't foreclose out the possibility of the NHL playing there. So, we made the league aware of what we had in mind early on, and we had had come to know the leadership of the NHL by that time. By the time we were making those design decisions, and so they were aware of what we were doing. How
did you meet David Thompson?
Well, I met him by virtue of they owned the property that the MTS Centre sits on, and we were looking at an alternative site. Initially, we were looking at a site that would have been south of the convention center, and they approached us. People that ran his real estate company approached us about the idea of building it on Portage Avenue. So it was through that process that we got to know each other. And
how do you strike up a relationship with someone like that? What was the common ground? Was it hockey? Was it the Winnipeg experience?
No, I think it was just a project. They liked the project. They had a fairly significant investment in some real estate in Winnipeg, and they had acquired the Eaton's building, and it was vacant, and they were looking for a solution. They had tried a number of different solutions for it, and had spent a couple of years doing that, and just couldn't come up with anything that would work. And so they approached us.
At what point do you have the conversation about, hey, let's bring the NHL back here? Was that understood early on in the relationship?
No, it wasn't understood at all. It wasn't, was never even discussed. It was really a matter. It was all about building the MTS Centre and trying to ensure that it was in and of itself, that an American League franchise would be a viable business. And we became convinced of that early on. But the NHL subject never came up till after the work stoppage season, and the economics changed dramatically, and it was at that point in time, exactly when I couldn't tell you, that we started talking about it seriously.
You had met Gary Bettman at the Salt Lake City Olympic Games. Tell us that meeting, because I think you snuck in to meet him.
Well, I didn't know. I had met him prior to that. I had met him I had represented the International Hockey League in the negotiations that ultimately led to those leagues coming together and us joining the American League. It was through that process that I first met him. So I had been a part of a couple of meetings with him. But I was at my buddy of mine, Brent Stephenson, and I drove down to the '02 Olympics, and we had tickets to the hockey games, and we bumped into him, literally. And I didn't know him well, but I knew him well enough to say hello, and next thing you know, we had sort of VIP treatment, and so that was cool. We were there for a better part of that week, watched all the games, and got to know him a little bit better through that process.
At what point does Winnipeg become a viable option, safety valve, if you will, for either the Phoenix or the Atlantic or any other franchise? At what point are you taken seriously by Gary Bettman? Because we know a bit of the history here with Balsillie trying to kind of wedge his way back in. You played it very, very differently, and basically saying, hey, we're here. We've got the money. We've got the backing. We've got the arena. We'll wait our turn. At what point does he take this seriously?
Well, I think it had to have been in 2007, because that's when we were invited to make a presentation. Ourselves and 4 other cities were invited sort of out of the blue. I had stayed in contact with him and reminded him of how we were doing, and that we were interested, and then we got this invitation. So Jim Ludlow and I flew to New York in, I think it was January of '07, and we made a presentation. And shortly thereafter, we started getting introduced to possibilities of teams that were looking to sell or that could potentially relocate. So it was that summer immediately following that I thought, okay, well, we've obviously made the right impression. We met with their executive committee, gave them a full presentation on the city of Winnipeg and how it had prospered, in the years that had followed the NHL leaving. And I think they took us reasonably serious at that point in time.
At what point did it get to the point where we almost got the franchise a year ago, correct?
That's correct.
Tell us about that.
Well, that was sort of the culmination of a couple of years of work where we were first introduced to the idea of Phoenix in, I'm going to say, late 09, early 09, late in our hockey season, spring of 09. And it was like late April, and we were in the playoffs, and, it was sort of, would you be interested in pursuing this? And we had to say, we're not set up to do that right now. And then which was fortunate because the attempt to put it into bankruptcy, or not the attempt, but putting it into bankruptcy, the attempt to move it immediately followed that. So we just stood back and then got reintroduced to it later that year after the team had come in and out of bankruptcy. And we went right to the 11th hour in May of 2010, but fully knowing, from day one that it was the league's desire to keep the team in Glendale if they could. So we knew we were Plan B, and we were happy to be Plan B, frankly. What came out of that was, I think, a deeper acknowledgement by the league that we were capable of doing this, and it was really at that point in time where the commissioner said to me that you're going to get a team. You're either going to get this team, for what would have been last season, or you're going to get the next one, whatever that one is.
Why do you think hockey fans have had such a bad impression of Gary Bettman, yet in the conversations I've had with you over the years, you say he's a very different person? Why is that?
Well, I think that it goes to, I think we as Canadians feel it's our game, right? And we don't like the fact, or a lot of people don't like the fact that it's run out of New York City. I think that is one of the sort of foundational aspects of that resentment or whatever. Obviously we lost the team, and when things go badly, in my experience, human nature is to try and find someone to blame, and I think the league and Gary at the time were an easy target, and I think from that it just became sort of a self-perpetuating dynamic that it just became. And then the league struggled for years in Canada, and so it wasn't just a Winnipeg thing. It became popular across Canada to find fault with the NHL, and he's the symbol of the NHL, and it just became sort of a freight train.
You're hoping that fans will applaud him, treat him nicely when he comes here on the 9th of October.
Yeah, I sure do. I mean, I can tell you he's never treated me personally or anybody in our organization with anything but the utmost respect, and I think I'm a pretty good judge of character. I sensed from Gary the first time we really talked about the team coming back here, back say 07, that there was a deep remorse that the team had left. That it was his words were he would like to right a wrong. He thinks it was wrong. It was unfortunate, and I think he personally, takes some responsibility for it. Though I don't know that the league was responsible. So, I mean, he's treated us with a great deal of respect, and I hope we do the same when he comes to town.
Mark Chipman is with us on CJOB 68.